Welcome everybody to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Jesse Weber and thanks for joining us. The trial of Alec Murdaugh, the now disgraced former attorney charged with killing his wife and son, is likely to stretch on much longer. And that is because the jury is now hearing testimony about Murdaugh's apparent corruption. On Tuesday, jurors heard for the first time about Murdaugh's finances leading up to June 7th. That's when prosecutors allege Murdaugh killed his wife Maggie and son Paul to distract from his alleged misdeeds. Now, typically, testimony like this wouldn't be allowed in because Murdaugh is only charged with fraud. He hasn't been convicted of it. But here, the judge determined that the state could bring it in because it is so closely intertwined with other things going on in Murdaugh's life in the summer of 2021. Lawyers are now indicating that because the jury will need to hear the same testimony that the judge and court watchers already heard, the trial is going to last at least another week. Now, some of the most damning witnesses are those who worked alongside Murdaugh at his law firm. In fact, when prosecutors asked a former colleague who had known Murdaugh for decades what he was like, well, this is what she had to say.
What were your observations of him as a lawyer?
I think Alec was successful more not from his work ethic, but from his ability to establish relationships and to manipulate people into settlements and clients into liking him. So he did it through the art of bull, basically.
That can be an art.
Mm-hmm.
Did he, in your estimation, in your judgment, was he more of a technical type lawyer, or was he one that really understood how to use the emotion of a case?
He would use the emotion of a case and the emotion of his clients.
No mincing words there. I'm joined by my co-hosts, legal experts, public defender Brian Buckmeyer, former trial attorney Terry Austin. Brian, it seems like it is one bombshell after another in this trial so far. You think the defense is going to put on a case? What would that case even look like from the defense?
Well, Jesse, first, I thought the art of BS was a good thing for a defense attorney, but I guess it's bad. But the defense is going to have to counteract that. Don't forget, in opening statements, they came out saying that Alec is a good guy. He loves his family. He loves his wife. He loves his son. Now with these financial crimes and some of the background information that we're seeing here, they're going to have to contradict that in the case. It's another battle, another front that they're going to have to push back on the prosecution's narrative. I'm expecting them to get witnesses who actually liked him, who said that he was a good guy, said he was generous, trying to create this facade or this image that he's not the type of person to commit this crime, because while the prosecution can bring in the financial crimes, they still can hang their hat on, this is not the type of person he is, but they've got to prove it.
Well, what about, Terry, how the defense did on a cross-examination of the CFO? Did they make any points at all?
Well, they made some minor points, but I have to say second jury was definitely on point, and as you saw during that clip, she did not mince any words. But I think the cross-examination made a couple little points. He started out by saying, look, there are all these frauds, but those are going to be separately tried in other criminal courts, and she had to admit, yes, that's the case. And he did state that the murder occurred June 7th, and when she started investigating everything, she basically waited until September to do all of the thorough investigation of those crimes. Why did she wait so long? He implied that something was amiss at that point. And then she found that in 2011, all of these misdeeds happened and nobody caught any of it. So he was trying to imply that the firm was allowing it to occur.
All right, it's an argument. Look, we're going to continue to follow this Murdaugh trial. Bombshell development every day. A lot to cover there. And welcome back, everybody. A Massachusetts mother was arraigned on murder charges Tuesday from her hospital bed. Lindsay Clancy may have been suffering from postpartum psychosis when she allegedly strangled her children. Her 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son died the night of the attack, while the 7-month-old died a few days later at a hospital. Clancy's husband, Patrick, says that he'd been working from home to help out, but went to pick up food, and when he got home, he found her outside, apparently after she jumped from a second-story window in an attempt to die by suicide. During Tuesday's hearing, the judge decided not to set a monetary bail, saying Clancy is a minimal flight risk. The prosecutor walked the court through what 911 dispatchers heard when Patrick found the children in the basement.
He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found his children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as the time passes. Cora and Callan were on the floor in the den area of the finished basement, which is to the left when you walk down the stairs. while Dawson was alone on the floor in his father's home office, which is to the right when you go down the stairs. Each child still had the exercise band that was used to strangle them tied around their necks when their father found them. Dawson and Kellen were face down on the floor. Cora was on her side with her torso turned towards the floor. He removed the bands and begged them to breathe. He continued to scream uncontrollably and screamed for officers to come to the basement. The dispatchers are hearing this and they send help down to the basement. And when they encounter Patrick, he yells out, "She killed the kids."
That is just awful. Brian, how can Clancy be arraigned, though, if the attorney believes she may have postpartum depression or psychosis?
So, Jesse, there's a slight difference between the competency to progress through the criminal case and a potential insanity defense. Competency just says, do you understand who your lawyer is and what's going on in the case? That doesn't seem to be the question here. What they're probably going to do with Clancy is going to evaluate her to see if at one point in time, specifically at the time of these charges or crimes, was she suffering from probably postpartum psychosis. Depression might not give them what they want, but postpartum psychosis could help in explaining or mitigating the allegations against her.
Well, Terry, Lindsay was prescribed multiple medications, which apparently affected her mood or behavior. You think the physician has any criminal or legal, civil exposure?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this kind of thing happen in the past where a doctor prescribes a patient too much of a particular medication, and here the husband actually said to the doctors, look, she's acting like a zombie. And if in fact for medical malpractice the physician did not go by the standards of that practice area, then it could be medical malpractice, it could be negligence if he caused the injury. And if that medicine caused the injury to the patient and she injured herself, and clearly she did here, and her children, there could be some viable claim against the physician.
Just a horrible, horrible, horrible story to think about. And now the question is, how did this happen? So it's something that we'll continue to monitor. Well, there's another case on our radar out of Broward County, Florida we want to talk about. 3 men began trial on Tuesday in the 2018 shooting death of rising rap artist XXXTentacion. The rapper's real name is Jahseh Onfroy. He was 20 years old when he was gunned down at a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach. Onfroy went to the dealership with a man named Leonard Kerr, who told investigators that the rapper was shot while driving out of the dealership parking lot. In fact, Kerr said that Onfroy's vehicle was cut off by a black SUV, and 2 gunmen got out and demanded property from Onfroy. They later opened fire on the rapper and stole a designer bag that had cash and the rapper's personal belongings. Investigators say defendants Michael Boatwright and Trayvon Newsom are responsible for shooting Onfroy, while Dedrick Williams drove the getaway car. A 4th co-defendant, Robert Allen, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and robbery with a firearm and plans to testify against the other men. The 3 co-defendants faced life in prison on first-degree murder and other charges. Opening statements happened Tuesday afternoon, so let's take a listen to how each side is laying out their case.
As Jahseh is there, unarmed, in the driver's seat, surprised by the 2 gunmen in this case. You'll hear how they start struggling with him, punching him, and that both of the gunmen at one point are trying to get his property from him. They're able to wrestle away from him the satchel that had the $50,000 in cash. And without any provocation, without any type of weapons or anything being used by the victim, you'll hear how Michael Boatwright fires several times, killing the victim at close range.
Police ignored an extraordinary amount of evidence that Michael was not the killer. A day after his arrest, BSO searches Michael's home. They go through that home with a fine-tooth comb. They pull out a whole bunch of stuff from the home. They do not find a murder weapon. They do not find lots of money. None of that has any of Jahseh Onfroy's DNA.